Everyone, depending on where you are in the world. It's Wednesday today, and we are back for another Confidence Convo. And this is our second season of our podcast, and this is our first episode of the new year. So we're filming this in 2024 in the new year, and today we're diving into why change is so hard. And we have the kind of new year vibe, we have all the new year feelings. So this is a fantastic episode to kind of get started with. And I know that many of us have action goals and, to-do lists to change ourselves, to do all sorts of different things to make ourselves feel better, in the new year. And, if you haven't listened to the last episode of season 1, which we filmed in December, please feel free to go and listen to that, because we talk about resolutions, we talk about New Year's, and we talk about all these things. So even if we put New Year's aside, change is really, really hard. And most of us find a way to resist it. And Joanna, I don't know if you have any kind of better ways of kind of explaining what happens in our bodies and in our brains as to why we kind of resist change.
Yeah. Quickly, before we do that, I'm curious, are we changing the way that we introduce ourselves? Because we haven't done that yet. So I was wondering if maybe
Oh,
first we should introduce ourselves.
that's a very good idea. I think we should do that.
Yeah,
I think
so
we
much
should do
change,
that.
we couldn't keep track of it.
Yeah, see, this is already like everything's just changing in the new year. So yes, I'd love to introduce myself. I am Davina Maria, and I'm a master coach and founder of the Restore Yourself Method and the host of Worthy Women Facebook group. And I help female go-getters in their 30s develop unshakable confidence so they can powerfully step into their limitless potential. Over to you.
Awesome. My name is Joanna Tonkin. I'm a registered psychotherapist and confidence coach. I am the founder of the Confidence Formula. I work with young adults to help them improve their self-confidence so they can become successful. Davina and I got together to create this for you because we are obsessed with all things personal development, and we strongly believe in the power of community and learning from one another.
And just to clarify, we are not perfect at being confident all of the time. Like you, we move through our struggles and overcome obstacles and mindsets to continuously improve. So just think of us as guides by your side.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So to answer your question, first, yeah, change is so hard. It's something that we all struggle with. It's something that all of my clients struggle with. So if you are struggling with change, just know that you are totally not alone. It is normal, and it is valid to have resistance to change. One of the things that I like to teach my clients is that our brain is actually adverse to any type of change.
Mm-hmm.
This is why. So basically, if you think about it, the brain has so many responsibilities. It controls our thoughts, it controls our memories, it controls our respiration and our heart rate, and it controls so much, right? And it's doing so much for us all of the time. And one of the things that the brain is primarily focused with, our reptilian brain is primarily focused with keeping us alive and keeping us safe. If we're not alive, we can't do all the wonderful things that human beings do, right? So in order to keep us safe, our brain likes to predict outcomes that will happen in the future. It likes familiar and comfortable environments. Think of it like your comfort zone, right? That's what we say a comfort zone is, something that you've experienced before, something that you're comfortable with. It likes keeping us in that space because it knows what's probably going to happen. It knows the best decision to make in that situation, and it doesn't have to use a lot of energy to get there, right? It's using all this energy to make our whole body function, our whole life work. It doesn't want to use a lot of energy to keep us safe. So our brains are actually adverse to any type of growth, any type of changing, because it wants to A, keep us safe, and safety is the comfort and familiarity of what we already know, and B, it doesn't want to use a lot of energy, right? New experiences require more thinking, more problem solving, more figuring things out, and our brain just doesn't want to do that. So as much as you or part of you wants to grow, or part of you wants a new habit, or part of you wants to change in some way, your brain is actively working against you, which is, I think, why change is so challenging and so hard to implement.
So basically you're saying that the brain thinks it's more efficient in terms of what it needs to do for our survival if things stay the same constantly all the time and we're safe, and then the brain thinks, oh, I can kind of deal with this, this is great, I can efficiently run this person. That is so interesting. I love that.
Correct. Yeah. And it all comes down to safety and survival. So if you think of like more primitive times, you would know that going to a specific watering hole was safe, right? And so you would choose to go to that specific watering hole. But if you went to a new watering hole, right, changed it up, that might be unsafe. So why would you do that? Why would you risk your safety, right, to go and do something new? Right. And so it all comes back down to just like keeping us safe, keeping us in our familiar. Why change things up when we're doing fine? And then the stress that we feel when we're changing, our body doesn't like the stress. So it's like avoid the stress, avoid the discomfort. Let's just stay in our comfort zone and say la vie. But we know that doesn't work.
Yeah. That really makes sense. I feel like our connection's gone a little bit weird.
Can you hear me?
I can now. Oh, I think we're back. I think we're back. Can you hear me?
Are you with me?
I am.
Oh, hello. Are you back?
I think we are back. I think we're back.
Hello.
I absolutely love this, by the way, because this is the beauty of being live. Can I just say that?
Oh, thanks for naming that. All the fun challenges and trials and tribulations of being live on Facebook, social media. But I think we're back.
I think we are back. Thank goodness for that. I think we've gone again. I don't quite know if it's Joanna's internet or mine. We'll just give it another couple of minutes to see if it comes back.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah, I think we're back.
Let's not say it, because the last time we said that, it just went again.
Okay. So we were just talking about how the brain is conversely related to us wanting to change and then changing habits and what we want to do. So I was just curious, what you thought about that.
I love it, and I can see how that little bit of information can kind of feed into so many different aspects of our lives. I think that knowing that our brain just wants to keep us safe and look after us in that way, I think is amazing from a positive point of view, because your body is being efficient, your body is learning and your brain is learning, and as it learns, it sort of does things to keep you safe and look after you. And I think having that is amazing. And on the flip side, because we're talking about change and how hard it is, I can also see how, like you said, our brain is actively working against us at every turn when we are trying to get out of our comfort zones, when we're trying to, do something new, when we're trying to, ask for help, if we're like a super independent person, so many different things, I think can feed into this, which is absolutely fascinating.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And with what you just said, what comes to mind is this idea of like, even if we want to change and even if we can get our brain on board, a lot of the time we don't know what we don't know.
Yeah.
Right? We don't know what we need to do in order to start exercising or find that relationship or become more confident. We don't know the steps that it takes. And so not only is our brain working against us, we're actually unprepared for the steps that it's required. We might have like an idea of what we want, but we might not know how to get there. Right. And so without knowing how to get there, the journey becomes really overwhelming.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, the feelings that kind of come up when you're trying to do something new and your brain is kind of fighting against you, I think sometimes the feelings can be very uncomfortable, especially if they're not feelings that you feel on a regular basis. If you're not constantly trying to break out of your comfort zone, if you're only doing it once a year in January at New Year's because you've decided that this year you're going to join a gym again, and you only ever do that hard thing once a year, I think it can be really hard to almost like recognize what happens when you go against your brain.
Totally. Kind of like how to get comfortable with the discomfort that will happen when you start to change.
Yeah, 100%.
And the more that you're right, the more that you try to put yourself out of your comfort zone, the more comfortable you get with some of that stress or resistance or fear, and you work through some of those emotions that are holding you back.
Yeah, totally. So now that we know sort of what happens in our brain and how our brain kind of functions, how would you kind of help someone? And I know we've spoken about this in previous episodes, and obviously if someone hasn't listened to them, I guess we can kind of go over it really quickly again. But I know that we've spoken about neural pathways before.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm guessing that in terms of change and why change is so hard, I'm guessing that the neural pathways kind of come into that as well, and kind of changing the neural pathways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it kind of goes back to what I was sharing before about just the brain being trying to keep us safe. The brain is programmed in what it already knows, but knows that going to water.
I think our connection may just have gone again.
Dates, let's say, and you know,
are we back?
Going on dates whenever we think about programmed. What's really cool about the brain is something called neuroplasticity, and they've proven that
Oh no, I think Joanna's actually just dropped out. So I just want to say that this is exactly what happens in your brain when you're trying to change. I think this is a fantastic thing that's just happened when we're talking about this, because we've just been talking about how the brain works against you. And as we're trying to record this podcast, our internet is working against us because we're trying to do something different. We're trying to change. And this is the exact kind of day-to-day real life example, I guess, of a picture of what happens in our brain when we try and change. So I do apologize for the technical difficulties, guys. This is exactly what happens when we go live. So yeah, hopefully you'll be able to still catch bits and pieces of this episode. And I know that Joanna and I normally give tips if you're struggling with change, and we were also going to talk about the positive side of change as well. So just to kind of give a couple of tips. Oh, are you back?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yay! I literally just said, as you disappeared off the screen, I was like, this is a real life visual representation of what the brain does to you when you try to change. It literally works against you. You know, in this case, the internet is what the brain is trying to do to keep us safe. And it's disrupting the connection that we have so that we cannot record our podcast.
And we cannot allow you to do the change that you so desire.
Yeah, how funny is it that this has happened on this episode?
Yeah, it's great. It's great.
Yeah.
So I was just in the middle of talking about some of the tips and strategies that I use with my clients to help them move towards change. How do you feel about talking about some of those things?
Yeah, just before you came back, I had started doing that as well. So I think we're on the same page. So fantastic. You go first.
Great. So I was just talking, one of my first strategies was to start small, right? Have like less is more. Instead of focusing on all the areas of your life, try focusing on one. Choose a place to start and start taking small steps in that direction. Wondering what you suggest.
I would always say, think about your reason why. So, you know, I think about myself, and I go to the gym with a friend. And this morning I said to her, I said, why is it so hard to get up in the morning and get to the gym? And we had a conversation about it. And I think the reason why we go to the gym is what keeps us going, because let's be honest, at 7 o'clock in the morning when it's dark outside and it's freezing cold, it is so much easier to think, I'm not going today, it's warm in my bed, I'm just gonna like sleep for another hour and then I'll get up and then I'll start my day. So for me, it's always thinking about your reason why, because that is the reason that will push you towards, you know what, I am going to get up and I'm going to do it because I have a reason why I'm doing it.
Yeah, great. I love that too. Another thing that I kind of talk about with my clients is to view change as an experiment. Instead of being critical if you don't get the results that you want, consider it an experiment. I'm gonna try to eat healthy today. I'm gonna try to go on a date and have a little bit more fun this time. I'm gonna try to participate more in a work meeting. I'm going to, and so whatever it is that you're trying, consider it an experiment, and it can go horribly wrong, and it can be just like it was in the past. But be open to the possibility of it maybe being a little bit different. And if it is not comfortable, if it isn't pleasant, maybe don't be so hard on yourself, knowing that change is really hard. Your brain's working against you. And, kind of avoid that self-criticism, which just adds more shame, more fuel to the fire.
Yeah, definitely. I think one of my tips would be as well about trying to be a bit more self-compassionate, because change takes time. And I think understanding that it's not going to happen overnight. Some of the really big things that we really want do not happen very quickly. And I think, reframing it sometimes from change to growth might help, because as you're growing and changing, you have to be patient. You have to go through different levels, if you like, and, different struggles. And I think if anything was given to us the minute we wanted it, I don't feel like we would actually be prepared in that moment to have it. If you just think about something really huge that you want right now, sometimes wanting it is great, but then you've got to kind of work towards having it.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I always talk about it in terms of like 1% growth is still growth. right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of people say baby steps are still, forward motion, and that's very
Yeah.
true. Yeah.
Hmm. Love that too. Another thing is just to be more growth and learning oriented instead of being focused on the accomplishment. The accomplishment will planted the seed. Now isn't going to happen overnight. So be more focused, more invested in the
Yeah.
growth than where you actually want it to be at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. I love that one. I
You with
think,
me?
yeah, focusing on like moving forward is always a fantastic thing to do.
Mm-hmm. Any other tips?
I don't have any other tips, but what I was going to talk about very quickly, because I know we're running out of time, was that there is actually a positive side to change. And I know for the majority of us, it is really difficult and it is something that we resist with all of our strength, or maybe something that our brain resists with all of its strength, and we find it really difficult to cope and kind of change. But I personally quite like change. I get quite excited when something changes. And just thinking of a really small example, I'm going to think about changing my phone. So let's imagine that I currently use a Samsung, and let's imagine that I decide I'm going to change to an iPhone. It's a completely different brand. You use it in a completely different way. The charging is different, the memory is different, everything's different. And I know a lot of people who will hang on to their really old phones, really old handsets, because they are so afraid that they are going to lose pictures, they're going to lose files, they're going to have things are not going to be in the same place. It's going to look different. They're not going to be able to find what they need. They won't be able to message people very quickly. They won't know how to use the handset. And they kind of talk themselves out of it. They kind of go, oh, do you know what? I'll just keep hold of what I have because I know how it works. I know what it does and I know where I am with it. And I'm slightly different in the sense of when I think about change, I get really excited because I think about what I'm going to gain. I don't think about what I'm going to lose. And I think I've had this mindset for a while. I don't know exactly when it started, but I've had this mindset for a while where I will always focus on the gain rather than the loss. I think as we change and as we grow, there is always, a side effect of that is always a loss of some sort. But I think there's also always a gain and always a
Mm-hmm.
growth. So I'll always think about it. And in the example of a new phone, I'd always think about it as, well, if I'm getting an iPhone, I know the camera is a little bit better than what I have. The phone is newer. More people use iPhone, so I'll have better apps, whereas, maybe I don't get apps that are so good now. And I'll kind of go through a list of why is this a good thing? And that normally gets me through the pain of change. It normally gets me through the pain of, transferring all your contacts and making sure you haven't lost anything and learning how to use a new phone, or your phone ringing in a meeting when you're like, oh my God, I don't know how to silence it. So I think I always kind of focus on the gain. And I think a lot of times when you look at the gain of what you're getting as you change, it's amazing. It's almost like something that could go on your vision board, and sometimes it is linked to your reason why. So I absolutely think that there's a very positive side of change, and for me, that is kind of how I deal with any change, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think having change be exciting is probably easier for the brain to digest than having brain be
Yeah,
stress provoking or anxiety provoking and fearful. Yeah. So kind of coming at it
yeah,
from a place of excitement or a place of curiosity can be a lot more helpful.
yeah, totally. And I know you said earlier about it being an experiment. I think as well, if you're very curious and experimenting with change, I think it can actually be an adventure as well. I think it can be like this new exciting thing that you're
You again.
that you're doing.
The last thing that I
Yeah.
will add is on similar who have gone better, or more familiar with the steps that you can
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
So I would say that if you don't know how to become more, your goal is for the new year. There are people who know how to do what you're trying to do and didn't know anything about psychology or the brain or how to change or how to work with clients until I literally learned all of those skills and all steps. So
I think our connection is gone again. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of start wrapping up because we've been on 25 minutes now. But it's been so great, Joanna, chatting with you on this topic. I absolutely love talking about change. And we will be back in 2 weeks' time to talk about another topic, and we'll be back with another episode.
Fully
Oh,
back yet, but it as